good morning, and welcome to your Aging in Place plan. And your speaker this morning will be Scott Parkin. Scott Parkin is President of Reston for a lifetime and a longtime member of UUCR. Much of his career was in the field of aging, and he's still at it. He retired from Justice and Aging, where he was its first Director of Communications, and before that, he was Vice President of Communications for the National Council on Aging. He had the same position at Leading Age when it was called the American Association of Homes and Services for the Aging. Scott represented UUCR on the Reston Interfaith Board before it became Cornerstones, and he recently served on the Fellowship Square Board of Directors. He and Joyce have lived in Reston since 1996, and their children attended RE here in the 1980s. Scott is going to be talking about aging in place today. Scott Parkin.
You don't have to repeat good morning, but good morning. Thank you, Reverend Aileen, and good morning. Welcome to a presentation about planning for aging in place. After Reverend Aileen's sermon this morning, I kind of threw out some notes and how I was going to begin this. The reason is that my dad died, I guess, 2016. He was 94 years old. He didn't have a plan. That was not his style. He did not plan. If he had money, he spent it. He didn't have savings. But his last wife, he had 4, his last wife and he did get long-term care insurance when he was in his 70s. She could afford the premiums, which aren't cheap when you're that age. Anyway, the policy just covered home care and home health care. And when he finally needed it, he wanted to stay in his own home, his own apartment or whatever, wherever he was living. And my brother, who's a health insurance broker, and I put our heads together, and we actually did create a plan and helped him stay in place, age in place, as long as possible. It was when he was about 93 that he couldn't hear anymore, he couldn't see out of one eye, and he was a voracious reader. He loved music, jazz especially. And anyway, I had to find him a nursing home, and he, again, had no savings at all. So it turned out, because he was in World War II, and he fought in the South Pacific on an LST, helping Marines and trucks and tanks get on the shores of these islands all over the South Pacific, and he made it through without dying. That's why I'm here. But anyway, he needed nursing home care in the last year or so of his existence. And I flew out to Denver and found him a decent one. But I guess the moral of the story is that, or the story of the moral wasn't that the capital steps, it was that it's important to have a plan so that in a crisis, like he had a crisis, he really couldn't, he was falling all the time, that was the big one. You need to be able to figure out, what am I going to do and how do I navigate this system, which is sort of a non-existent system, but how do I navigate this? So anyway, this morning, I'm going to hear about what Reston for a Lifetime is, what we do, what we offer to the community and to you, and why it's important to plan ahead, as I just said. So I'm going to see if this works. It does. So anyway, we have a vision of our community where residents can live as independently as possible for as long as possible. Our mission is to educate and inform you and your neighbors about how to age in place, and enable neighbors to help neighbors, which is a lot like the caring circle, to stay independent as long as you possibly can. AARP and others who've done surveys about this topic find that as much as 80% of people over age 65 want to stay independent as long as possible, to age in place in their own homes. That doesn't mean people aren't thinking, well, I'd rather live in Florida than here. That's a different animal, but they may go there and want to stay in their own homes. That's one possibility if you can afford to. But it's that whole idea of trying to stay at home as long as possible, and how on earth do we do that? Did it change? It did. Good. Anyway, a little bit of history. Starting in 2009, there were a small group formed and did a lot of community listening to identify what are the needs of the older adults in our community. At the time, Reston Association had a committee called the 55 Plus Committee. And now that's a little bit dated because people 55 to 65 are most likely working. They aren't waiting to get on a bus to go downtown to see a museum. That's not what they're doing. They're commuting maybe still and working. So that's kind of changed. And I just talked to the Reston Association board about that, and there is some interest in reforming a committee that looks at the needs of those of us who are over 65. So that's a good thing. But anyway, our past president, Sharon Canner, started a newsletter in the mid-2000s, and she also built a website with someone named Steve Gurney, who runs something called the Positive Aging Community. He is a Reston resident as well, and so is Sharon, and so am I. Anyway, they built a website. So along comes COVID, and I, who had been painting watercolors for about 5 years or so since retirement, I said, well, they could use my help. So anyway, I volunteered, and we didn't even see each other physically meet for months because of COVID. And I spent almost a year rebuilding the website and helping with the newsletter. And now that's just kind of what we do. We have a newsletter that's free and it's monthly, and we have a website that we maintain and keep updated, which is a job all in itself. And in 2024, we created something called My Aging in Place Housing Plan, which is just one aspect of aging in place, but it's a pretty important one because that's what people are saying. I want to stay in that place as long as I can. So anyway, what do? We do educational efforts like this, presentations. I've done St. Anne's Episcopal this year and a few other places, things like that. We also do exhibits at various events that are targeted to older Restonians. I think what's interesting is somebody pointed out, one of our sponsors pointed out to me this year, he said, I did a search for Reston for a Lifetime without using Reston for a Lifetime around the terms, the resources that we have on our website, and put in the word Reston in the search bar. And we came up on the first page of Google almost across the board. And not always the first page, but usually the first or second page of these search engines, not just Google, but whatever they're called, the other ones, Safari, etc., which was kind of gratifying because I wasn't really paying attention to that or pushing that out there, but we're out there and we're visible. And again, we've done, in our short history, which we started in 2022 as a nonprofit, we've done webinars. We did a bunch of them, and some of you may have seen them. And we did them with Steve Gurney and Positive Aging Community. They were about broad national aging policy questions. And what we found is, because Steve Gurney has a huge mailing list, and it's all over the DC area, the last one we did, which was on nursing home problems, there were 8 people from Reston on the webinar, and I said, well, that's not our mission. That's not what we're trying to do. So we're rethinking that, and this is actually being broadcast. So we're calling this a webinar. So this is more broadcast to our community. Yes, my newsletter readers got a notice, and I suppose some of them must be online, but I can't tell you because I can't see. But the idea is this is a webinar as well as having you right here. And the other thing that I've just started doing, and some of you may have read it, I do a column for the Reston Letter, which is a free newspaper that's sent to 24,000, not 10,000, 24,000 people in Reston. And mainly, I just choose topics out of the air sometimes that are kind of occurred to me that this might be of interest to readers. But it's, but it does say that, you know, I work for Reston for a lifetime. Anyway, our website, which I'm sure some of you have visited, is intended to provide you with the information you might need if you are thinking about this whole concept of aging in place and what does it mean and where do I find things, where if I need to, you know, if I need to renovate my home, where do I start? What do I start thinking about? But most of the resources we have on the website are nonprofits or government agencies. There are a few exceptions because we do have a hospital and they happen to be a for-profit. But the idea is that we're trying to give you reliable, unbiased sources for information, not businesses. We don't list businesses. There are others that do. You know, like Positive Aging Sourcebook has bazillion resources, which means you'd have to weed through and do your own kind of searches and vetting. There is something that many of us get. I used to get this in the mail all the time. It's called Best Picks Reports. I mean, they used to come in the mail. You know, I used to do all my own maintenance, so you know, once in a while I might need a handyman or something. But anyway, they're vetted people in there and handyman and stuff. But anyway, our free email newsletter is read by 1,000 people every month. If you haven't got a subscription, it's easy to subscribe. We do it the first of the month, or it comes out the first of the month every month. And it has information around aging in place, but it's broader than that. And there's a listing of a dozen or so events every month. And that whole idea of having events, it's a calendar really, it's addressing the issue of loneliness and boredom and staying engaged in the community. So that's the reason we do it. So you'll find a lot of events. And I have a new writer who's sitting over here, and she does the events. Her name is Caden Smith. And that's a great help to have somebody doing that. But I think you'd find it, even if you don't go to one of those events, I know somebody my spouse likes to look at it. Doesn't mean we go to every one or anything like that. But it's nice to have it and to know where all these concerts and things in the summer are happening. And there's sign-up forms in the lobby. I'm going to read this out loud. I'm trying not to read from my script or anything like that, but this is important because it's sort of fundamentally why we're doing what we do. Move to Reston for the kids, stay for the parents, and that it be possible for anyone to remain in a single neighborhood throughout his or her life, uprooting being neither inevitable nor always desirable. And that's Bob Simon, our founder. You know, the statue that's in Lake Ann is of Bob Simon sitting by the lake. But I think it's fundamentally what we're talking about. How do we do that? How do you stay in this one place for the rest of your life? So anyway, we developed this new plan idea. It's an online tool. Originally, it was a publication based on a publication, which is a huge, long book developed by the New River Aging in Place leadership team of Pulaski, Virginia, which allowed me to use it as a source, and because they're not copyrighted, but I asked for permission anyway. And it's very good, it's just that it's very, very long and publication. And we found testing a publication like that here, just on the topic of housing, people said, that's too much, I can't do that. So what we did online is we created something that room by room, you can do one at a time. You can create little plans around your bathroom or your entryway or whatever, so that You don't have to do it all at once, but you can start thinking about things like, well, if something happened to me or my spouse or my partner, what about the bathroom? Is it big enough for a wheelchair? What if I can't get out off the toilet anymore? Are there grab bars, and who's going to do that? So there are things like that. Again, it's about planning and starting to think ahead. So anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on how the plan works or how you work with it. I'm going to talk about key points that have to do with planning. And one is, think about what you really want and plan ahead, which is, I've already been talking about that. Reston is kind of unique. We have over 132, there's more being built all the time, townhouse clusters. There are not many that are single-level townhouses. They're almost all multi-level, meaning there are stairs. There are hundreds of single families, but I happen to know that there aren't many that have the master, or what do they call it, the main bedroom now? The primary bedroom. You're not supposed to say master anymore. The primary bedroom is on the first floor, and there's a full bath on the first. That's unusual. They exist, but there aren't a lot. Because when, in spite of what Bob Simon said, they weren't thinking about what's called universal design in the 60s and 70s, and probably most builders aren't even now. So it's a major issue since the baby boom generation, of which I'm a part, and many here in the room probably are as well. We're the largest generation in American history, 42 million strong, maybe, and less strong, but we're 42 million. And this country is not ready for us. And this is just one example, is that there is senior housing out there. If you want to go sit, and all the people that you see every day have silver hair, that's fine if that's what you want. It's not what I want. But anyway, it's, again, most of our housing was not developed with older people in mind. So anyway, think about what you really want and plan ahead. Well, it gets back to what I said at the very beginning. If you don't have any idea of what might be happening to you when you're 85 or 86, or if you're already there, it's still a good idea to start thinking about how to do this. And you might want to start, for example, in our questionnaire with the remaining at home questionnaire, which is kind of obvious that that's what we're talking about, isn't it? And it leads you through a set of questions, I think there are about 20 of them, in which if you answer no to a bunch of them, it's not scored in any way. Then you might want to think about creating a plan around those no's. In other words, it's designed so that you can start a plan based on the things that you may or may need. It's how the whole thing, that whole tool is built that same way, mainly around rooms in the house and questions like accessibility and affordability. So another key point is be proactive, identify resources. That's what our website is about. It's kind of like Aging in Place 101. If you really study what's in there, you'd probably be way ahead of your peers, because most people, and this is something from my career in aging and aging services, when we did surveys of the general public or whatever, using Gallup or whoever, people don't want to think about this until it hits them square in the face. Certainly not long-term care, and certainly not nursing homes. People do not want to think about that. And yet, you really need to start thinking about it as soon as you can, because it might be you, or it might be your spouse, or it might be even your adult child. It could be anybody. But the thing is, to know about this, you really have to kind of learn about what's out there and what exists. So again, within those questionnaires, there are lots of links that you can follow to the website and other places that teach you about these things. And if you don't know about it, you start to learn about it. What's really interesting is that where we live right now in Fairfax County is very rich in resources that help older adults, especially low-income older adults, but it doesn't stop there. There are lots of programs, whether it's Meals on Wheels or energy assistance if you can't afford your heating bill, that exist. Here's the problem. A lot of those programs are funded through the Administration on Community Living, which has been eliminated by the Trump administration. So just think about this. We are the largest generation in history, baby boomers, and that we're getting older and older. Most of us will be in our 80s within a few years, a whole bunch of us anyway. And the services that we will need are going to be taken away. So it gets to Reverend Aileen's sermon and what she was talking about. If that's something of interest to you, track it. There are organizations like ARP that sort of is into these issues. Justice and Aging, where I used to work, is tracking, the cuts to Medicaid and these programs. So if this is of interest, start learning about it. Not just the resources that are going to help you, but that are going to help others. So anyway, not all of us are planners. I know that. But the point is, and a lot of us want to put, next slide. A lot of this has to do with falls. Falls are the leading cause of hospitalizations for older people. And once you've had a really bad one, the really bad things start to happen. I don't know if you have experience with this or seen it, but it happens all the time. I went to an event just 2 weeks ago it was a Saving Claire event around a film about a woman who kept denying that she had to do any changes to her where she lived, and she falls and can't get up, and the EMTs come, and this precipitates all kinds of health problems. But it was at St. John Newman, which has 2,500 members, and they were like 300 people with silver hair and gray hair there, and it was quite something. And you can find Saving Claire by searching for it on Google, the program itself. But there's a lesson there that, again, this is what precipitates so much of the problems for elderly people. So it's good to know what resources are out there if something like that happens, of course. So again, much of the changes that you should be making or thinking about making to your own home, apartment, condo, or whatever, have to do with avoiding this, preventing falls. It's just one thing, but it's a pretty important one. There are contractors out there that help with this, in terms of doing remodeling. We even just got a sponsor who's one. But the point is that you can find people to help you do the changes you might need. And I'm not recommending that you do a lot of these yourself, because sometimes like putting a grab bar in the wrong place could be kind of dangerous, and just the sheetrock pulls away and you fall again. So it's not a good idea. The fourth point has to do with be prepared in a crisis, and that's what I'm talking about. I've talked about that a little already. But again, a lot of us don't really want to do that. And I kind of think of, Scarlett O'Hara and Gone with the Wind, fiddly-dee, I'll do that tomorrow, or think about that tomorrow. Well, that's not always a good idea either, because a sudden health crisis can happen anytime, especially to older adults. So before a crisis happens, do something. Plan ahead. If you don't want to use our tool, that's fine. Start with identifying the providers that you might need. Take a look around. What are not that you have to look at this now, but you might want to. If, for example, you need assisted living or memory care, check out what's around. Read about it. Look at their websites. It doesn't take a lot of effort, but just take a look. There are things on the extreme expensive end, and there are also things at the affordable end. So you need to kind of do your research, maybe in advance, because that would help if something really happens. In terms of what's out there to make sure that what you're looking at is a legitimate organization, there are lots of tools in terms of nursing homes and assisted living. There are either county, state, or federal resources out there that allow you to check and compare. So what's the next steps? Well, there's a table in the foyer that Ralph and Eileen and I are all on the board of Reston for a Lifetime. We're all members of this church. But anyway, we have newsletter sign-up sheets out there in the foyer. We're glad to talk to you. You can try out our online My Aging in Place housing plan and just take one room and see what happens. You can talk about us with your friends and colleagues. We appreciate donations just like the church does. And you could do that online. You don't have to give me a check today or cash. I don't, in fact, please don't. Check out our partners and our sponsors. I have to mention them because they give us money to keep us rolling. And then you can always contact us, which is me for now, info@restonforalifetime.org. So I'm going to leave this slide up for a while. You don't have to study it or anything, but these are the people that make it possible for me and others, and or to pay Cadence, for example. It allows us to provide you with information and resources. And it varies from, obviously, the Kensington, which is a very high-end, quite beautiful facility, assisted living and memory care, to a new one. We can hardly see a little black thing there. It's supposed to be white, but I didn't get to change it yet. But it's, I mean, the logo, it's a True Blue, it's called, and it's a handyman service, and they do small and large projects. So it just varies. And our partners tend to be nonprofits that agree to work with us and to partner with us, publicize us, and we publicize them on the website, annual report, et cetera. So if there are some questions, either from the audience, Ralph has a microphone, and if there's some online, Eileen is going to look at the chat and see if there are any questions coming in from the people out there in ether that might have a question. Any questions? Are there any questions in the chat? Oh, okay. That makes my life easy, doesn't it?
Everybody has their plan.
This isn't a question. Well, no, it is. How many people here have thought about aging in place and have already made some changes? If it's something as simple as, oh, wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. It could be something as simple as removing the throw rugs that you trip over all the time. But that's really, what was the easiest thing for you to do? Or the hardest thing for you to do?
Well, I have to say, I recently had a fall in my bathtub because of an aging bath mat, which didn't stick to the bottom of the tub, and I slipped and I fell and I dislocated my hip. I knew it immediately. But I had one of those buttons that you push, which I had installed years ago, and I was thinking about stopping it because I thought, well, it's a lot of money every month, and do I want it? Thank God I had it, because it not only called the EMT people, who were just amazing, but it also called my 2 kids. So, I'm glad I had it, and I don't think I'll discontinue it. So, and I do have a new bath mat and lots of grab bars. So.
Well, there is a section on assistive technology on the website, but I fell a couple of years ago, and my daughter made me get an Apple Watch. Yeah, and it's when I play tennis, sometimes it goes off, and I'm waiting for the ambulance to come around the corner.
So one thing you just made me think of, I live in a condo, there's about 10 condos there. I know 1 or 2 neighbors, but not the others. But it would be good to make a network with them, and I'm going to invite everybody around for a drink or something to get to know each other, so that we know our neighbors, because I only know like 1 in the building, but that's a thought.
That is a very good idea. We've tried in the past to try to get interest from like townhouse clusters and their boards to have neighbors helping neighbors. There is a caring circle here in the church that does that, and there's a whole concept around circles and books about it, about how you create your own circles of whether it's family or friends, and kind of figure out who can do what. or might do what? Will your kids be there, your adult kids, to help you? Or will a close friend be there to check in on you with a phone call or something if you're disabled? So it's an interesting concept, though, yeah, to kind of learn who your neighbors are and offer to help. Go ahead.
I was grateful for the helping committee when I fell at work and broke a toe. And I was very grateful for the help that I got, meals. So be members of this church. That's one thing you can do. But I have a question. My husband and I have moved to a condominium. And believe it or not, it's the condominium that's aging. The last 4 days, the elevator has gone out 15 times. I'm exaggerating by about that much. We live on the 4th floor. From the garage, that's 4 full flights of stairs. We're lucky we can do it, except sometimes we can't. Yesterday, my husband had a problem with his hip. He ended up walking up the stairs after resting for a bit, his hip. But my question is, are there funds for additional elevators in buildings that are aging? We need a second elevator. And I know that my condominium association isn't going to be able to afford to install a new elevator on a 25-year-old building that was made out of wood. Whoa, what are our options? Is there anything?
That's a complicated question. I don't know that I can give you a good answer. I think that's something you might want to address with the county and ask them, are there funds for, I mean, again, you're talking, I don't know what your ownership is or, what your association is responsible for, but I think that would be a place to start. But again, I can't answer, what about that. A lot of what we've developed is for people who are owning their own homes. Yeah, we live in an apartment building too. The elevators go out. We're on the 12th floor. We used to have a dog. So, I mean, going down those steps and coming up.
2 elevators?
No, I guess we have 3. If one's off, yeah, or 2 are off, it can be a problem, yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question, Scott. So in Mike's case, he said he has neighbors, he's making friends with his neighbors, and that's, is that an appropriate place to start a village?
Well, interestingly, I was in a session yesterday with the Caring Circle, and one of the questions I had been asked is whether the church could have their own village. And I don't know if people here know what that means. The Village to Village Network is a national organization that encourages the growth of what are called villages. And villages originated in Beacon Hill, Boston, where a number of elderly women who wanted to stay in their $2 million townhouses on Beacon Hill, they wanted to make sure they could stay there, so they banded together with their neighbors and started, I don't think they even called it a village, but they started a Neighbors Helping Neighbors program that is a lot like Caring Circle. It's a bunch of neighbors saying, well, we'll check in on you, or we'll make you a meal if you just got out of the hospital. We'll go get groceries or even go pick up your prescription. So I think that, or give you a ride if you need one. So that's where the concept originated. Now there are over a couple hundred of them. The largest concentration of these formal villages, where they often have staff and executive directors, are located, guess where, in the Metro DC area. Some of which are funded by the city of Washington DC, city of Fairfax funds one, and other municipalities or jurisdictions around the Beltway. So it's really grown, and it's kind of an interesting concept. But whether or not, one of the things we tried was to try to get, as I said, townhouse clusters interested in doing this, and there wasn't a lot of interest because, again, I started with the boards, and having been on these boards, kind of know that this is sort of peripheral to their duties of, keeping the sidewalks from deteriorating and putting a roof on your townhouse or whatever. So it was not probably the wrong place to start. But if there are clusters who formed in these sort of informal Neighbors Helping Neighbors programs, they do exist in Reston. There aren't many. They're generally large clusters that have an elderly component. And so they band together, just as these ladies did in Beacon Hill, and they try to help each other stay in their homes. So that does happen.
I've lived alone for the last 3 years, and I set up first I called my sister every day, and now I've switched it to my daughter. I think it's really important that people who do live alone have some kind of network like that. It can be a friend or whatever. And I list everything I'm going to do, sometimes with addresses, in case something happens. Also, that will take care of a 24-hour period, but it does not take care of if you happen to have a stroke. If you have a stroke, you need help within 3 hours. And that's where I started researching devices and then realized that my Apple Watch is a good approach for that. So if you live alone, think about that. Does somebody know where you are each day? And do you have a way to contact emergency help so you can get something in between?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, there's a term of art called solo aging, of which you're one, and it is important to do things like that. What's kind of interesting is I only found this out a few years ago, and we've done a little bit of it, is having a packet of information at the front door that's easily accessible to EMTs that tells you your blood type and a few other things and who your doctor is, and so that they're not, especially if you're in trouble and lying there on the floor or whatever, you may not remember all this stuff. So it's kind of having it in a place that's convenient that EMTs can find, and I think that's kind of an important thing to do. Yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Try it, go ahead.
Testing? Okay. So just an FYI about location and where you are. So my daughter lives in Manhattan, and she does online dating, and she goes all over the place. And she said, Daddy, I want someone to know where I am. So on her iPhone and on our iPhones, there is a way to share your location. So people, who you're friendly or close to will always know where you are.
It's called Life 360.
Life 360.
Life 360.
If you have an iPhone, it's already built into your iPhone. Yeah, it's in the iPhone. It's built in. You just press share location, and to your friends, whoever's on your iPhone will know who you are. And I know where she is all the time. I feel very good about that.
Google Maps has something similar for Android.
Yeah, Jane and I found there's another dimension to this, which is as you age, your friends age as well. And so we ended up putting a second handrail on the 7 steps to enter our house because we weren't thinking about it, but it's daunting to some who are our friends. So you may want to think about the people you'd like to be able to have over and that sort of thing when you're doing your survey of your house.
Fire department has little red packets that you can pick up, I think, at a firehouse they have cards inside, and they came to our apartment and passed them out. So we have them now. They're magnetic, and they are right on the refrigerator, and evidently EMTs, that's where they're going to look for information about you.
Right. Thank you. Linda?
It's sort of a perfect opportunity for me to advertise the Helping Hands that is an arm of our Caring Circle. And I recently volunteered to coordinate some of that. So far, it's just basically rides and meals. And then I rely on Caring Circle and other people to let me know when people have a need. I'm looking for a co-coordinator because I'm aging out of that job probably, and we're also hoping to get more sign-ups of people who are willing to do rides or provide meals. We also talked about it in the Caring Circle meeting about adding some other things like calling people on a regular basis or even providing a visit once in a while for companionship. So, but Helping Hands is something that we do have. It can be expanded and it works. We just need people to sign up. So, thank you.
Well, I think what's interesting, and we were talking about it a little earlier, I think I was talking with Bob, is that, again, what I said earlier about this being a resource-rich community is true. Rides, you may not be, it's one of those things you may not be thinking about now, but the idea is we have 3 programs I know of that are legitimate rides programs that vet their drivers, background checks, all that good stuff. It's not the same as somebody you know for the church, but at least it's Reston Community Center has RCC rides. Shepherd Center, which is it is not a religious organization, but it has a faith-based board, but it's a national organization, and we have a local chapter for Reston, Oakton, and Vienna, and they do a lot of what, again, the Caring Circle does. But these are kind of backup things. But they're there, and we can use them. There's also an organization called the Reston Useful Services Exchange. They also do rides. If you live in 20191, Herndon has a village with a rides program. So we're rich in that resource. So again, if it's something you can think about or do, if you want to join, again, Herndon Village, you have to join it and pay a membership, but you don't have to do that with some of the others. So Reston Use is now no longer a membership organization that charges fees, as far as I know. They gave up their website and their nonprofit status, but it's still a network of neighbors helping neighbors. So, and it was founded by Henry Ware, who was a member of this church in the 1970s. Go ahead.
So we've talked a number of times about connecting, and as many of you hinted, the Caring Circle really is looking for ideas about how we can increase the connection among congregants in this church. So we all wear that blue ribbon. So if you see us on a Sunday and you have an idea, please share it. Thanks.
And I just one kind of last thought. I think we probably need to close this down, but I think the Caring Circle is like the village model. It's neighbors helping neighbors age in place and get people connected to other people, have a sense of community. It's socialization. It's all the same components. It's just, and so Barbara asked me the other day, whether we should become, the Caring Circle should be a village. Well, it could be. There is no real formal process. You could just say, yeah, we are. That's what we do. So go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to reinforce the importance of the Caring Circle. But 2 other quick things. Both Linda and Fran talked about having some way to get emergency help if you need it quickly. And I had a terrible experience with my father about 30 years ago. I was out of state at the time, or living out of state. He was outside and fell, and literally he was on the ground for I don't know how long, hours, until a cousin came by to mow his lawn, found him. He went into the hospital and never came out. Now, I don't know if the outcome would have been different if he'd been found earlier, but the point is he was on the ground with no help for some period of time, and that's just really sad. The second thing, you had mentioned hard things. We did a hard thing because we needed to find a 1-level house in Reston. My knees were giving out even after a knee replacement surgery. And we had a house that had like about 4 sets of big stairs, so we had to get out of that. Fortunately, we found one and have been there for about a year in Reston. And I wanted to mention both that there are some, and the community we're in now, which is in South Reston, just off of Sunrise Valley, kind of where Wheelie comes in, has more than you usually find. There are a number of homes there that are one level. In some cases, they've added a second level, but a lot of them started out as one level. So they're there, but it took months working with an agent to find them. So it's a real challenge to stay in Reston on one level. But you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, some people, I mean, this gets to affordability. I mean, some people have, you know, I'm trying to think, the last house we owned was 3 stories and a lot of stairs. And we certainly thought about, well, what would happen if, and there actually was a space where you could have put a little elevator, but that's not cheap. And then there are, of course, the stair climbing chairs, whatever they're called, and that sort of thing. And there are other ways you could do that. You could expand if you have a half bath on your first level, you could make that a full bath with a shower, and you could take a dining room and turn it into a bedroom. So I mean, there are things you could do like that without having to move. But we're talking money, folks. And for the low-income folks, there are programs that the county offers, at least for now, that help people do things like this. Go ahead. Is there any more questions?
Does anybody want to sign up for the newsletter? I have a thing here for the sign-up sheet.
All right, well, are there any online? Any questions?
Yes. Not only have I thought about it and bought the help I fall on and can't get up button, I'm living it. In my townhouse, I have a number of grab bars, a roll-in shower in the bathroom with only 3 walls, an elevator, etc. May have forgotten a few things, but don't know what to do next with no budget for it.
What's the question? You know, I didn't understand everything.
I guess it's more of a comment, but it's don't know what to do next. What other ideas are there?
What other ideas are there? He or she has done all those things?
Yeah, for the aging in place solution. Diana?
I think it's somebody that knows you and Joyce and was commenting on her stuff.
Oh, they're commenting.
It sounds like they've done bathroom things.
Right.
You could do kitchen things.
Oh, right. No, I guess it was hard to understand. But yeah, it sounds like they've done, the idea would be, then go look at some of the other parts of your home, whether it's, the kitchen or it might be the entryway. Again, it really depends on what you're planning for. But for example, if you, for whatever reason, you're in an auto accident and suddenly you're in a wheelchair for life, can you stay in that apartment or that house? And what would you need to do? I'm not saying everybody has to go put a ramp out front and widen their doorways, but those are the sorts of things that we're talking about. And if you have a walker, can you get through the doorway? Things like that.
Perhaps a closing comment related to that question. The real question was, what next with no budget? So I think the answer is probably ask the county if there's services designed for people with low income. Look for federal money for services designed for people with low income.
Yeah, that is a good answer. Thank you. Are there any other questions from online? All right, well, I think, thank you.